Hello, this is Greg.
And this is Jesse.
And this is Spoilers Are Good Actually. It's a podcast where we revisit some of our favorite shows and we talk about how knowing the ending affects our experience the second time through.
Today we'll be talking about Season 1, Episode 3 of Avatar: The Last Airbender, The Southern Air Temple. The format of this podcast will be divided into two main sections. At first, we'll discuss the episode relatively spoiler-free, so that if anyone happens to be watching the first time and isn't yet convinced that spoilers improve your experience, you are welcome to cut out before we get into the meat of the podcast, which will be discussion, including anything in the Avatar universe, from the rest of the series to Korra to the comics. Everything's fair game.
Yes. So you said that this time around you wanted to do a 10-word summary in our spoiler-free section, right?
Yes. Last time I realized that we didn't really give any kind of recap of what was happening in the episode, and we don't want to be a recap podcast, but I think it would be good to just remind everyone the main ideas of what happened before we really get started.
Okay, who's going to do their first 10-word summary? Okay, I'll go. My 10-word summary is, Aang finds out about a genocide and Zuko kicks ass. Those are the main two lines, and obviously it's overly simplistic and on both levels, but it is a 10-word summary. But we find out some very important information about both of our characters in this episode. Aang is from a people who are well and truly dead. They're all gone, and we see Aang's grief, and we will go into that more, I'm sure, soon. And Zuko is at odds with Commander Zhao, someone who was introduced this episode, but he proves himself to be Zhao's equal in first of all, initial martial prowess, but also his superior as far as, quote-unquote, the moral high ground. And we'll probably talk about the politics of Avatar throughout this series as well. But I think it's very significant what we find out about both of these characters in these two disparate plot lines.
Yeah. So my 10-word summary, obviously it was for the same episode, so it's going to be pretty similar. But I wrote, Aang discovers genocide, glows, Katara new family, Zuko Zhao breakdance. So yeah, I don't know. That's interesting to see which pieces that we pulled out. Obviously, each of us, the main ideas are Aang finding out about the destruction of the air nomads, and then Zuko and Zhao's fight is really important. But I guess the thing that stood out to me that didn't quite make it into your 10 words was the moment where Aang goes into the Avatar state for the first time. And I just find that part to be really thematically important for the whole idea of found family.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point, actually.
Let's see, the first note that I have is talking about the introduction of Commander Zhao. And the big thing that I noted about his introduction is that literally the first thing we learn about him is that he is climbing the ladder of the Fire Nation army. His introduction is Iroh calling him Captain Zhao, and he responds with, "No, it's Commander now."
Yeah, so Commander Zhao as a character is, I don't know, he seems to strike this almost traditionally imposing military figure. He's no nonsense. He's very serious. You can tell he's used to having people follow orders. But he also he also seems to very clearly respect power, and it doesn't seem like he respects much else. But he says Iroh, the former general or something like that. I think Iroh had to tell him I'm retired now, but he really gives a lot of deference to Iroh. Meanwhile, Zuko, who at this point we know has been exiled and shamed by his people, he doesn't get anywhere near as much respect from Zhao. But it's also very important to Zhao that that Iroh recognizes that I'm no longer a captain. Thank you very much. I'm a commander. Please use that title because that matters to me.
Yeah, I just think it's another really great example of how purposeful all the introductions of characters are in the first half of season 1, where we might just get one small conversation with them, but we learn so much through this kind of, like, implied exposition. One of General Zhao's most defining characteristics is his, like, lust for power, and we see that immediately.
I think you mean Commander Zhao.
I keep calling him General.
But yeah, so, and then I really like the Zhao Zuko scene, because it really does kind of distinguish these two Fire Nation characters who, you know, I don't particularly like either one of them.
Yeah.
And you know, Zhao seems to be more of a dick than Zuko, and Zuko's not that great either. We've got this whole thing where where Zuko's got to talk to Iroh about, like, hey, what are we gonna? We're not gonna tell anybody about the thing that happened, right? And Iroh's like, oh yeah, no. And then they have to lie to Zhao badly. What happened? Was it? Did we crash? Yes, we crashed. And then Zhao's like, yeah, we interrogated your people. I don't know. It shows that, first of all, these two people who both clearly are not on the same side as our protagonists aren't on each other's side either. They're rivals. They are opposing each other, and they are not. They're neither one of them are to be trifled with, and they don't like each other. And that, of course, comes to a head later in the episode. But I think I want to talk about other things before we get to that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the main plot for the gang in this episode is going to the Southern Air Temple, and the whole process of Aang kind of discovering what has happened to his people and the air nomads in the 100 years that he's been gone. One thing I really noticed, since we were talking about the music last episode, is that as they're flying down and entering the temple, we have a very, like, chilling arrangement of the main opening motif, and they use, like, chimes, and it's slower. Okay.
Yeah. No, I really, I don't have any notes actually on the music itself. I wasn't really paying too much attention to that. I was really paying a lot more attention to kind of how they present what used to be Aang's home. How they tell you so much by doing so little. It is a barren wasteland, effectively. And, you know, Aang spends about 5 minutes there, and he realizes it also, that, like, this used to be full of life and people. Now there's nothing but weeds. And you see this moment where Katara and Sokka kind of look at each other, and then Sokka's like, so this airball game that you're talking about, how do you play? And, I mean, you know, it's apparent to anybody watching that, like, these two, they know why it's a barren wasteland, and they know what's going on, but it's kind of hard to break it to this kid that he's alone. He's, you know, the last airbender. And I thought that was very significant, like how they kind of conveyed so much by doing, you know, they didn't say anything about it. They just did it, you know? Yeah.
Then, of course, we have the whole plot where Katara is trying to somehow hide this fact from Aang, and she says, like, he'll be devastated if he finds out. Like, you're really gonna lie to him forever? You think he's not gonna eventually figure it out?
I mean, you know, I think she knows that. I think Sokka knows that too. There's that line where, you know, he gets knocked off of the pillar while they're playing airball. Apparently, the score was 7-0 when they stopped, so Sokka got knocked off like 7 times. And you know, they find the Fire Nation gear, and Katara's like, I need to show him. She calls him, and Aang starts coming over, and then she changes her mind. Water bends the snow onto Sokka's head, and after Aang goes away, Sokka says, you know, you can't hide it from him forever.
I guess I can understand why that's incredibly difficult for someone to do. Like, it's another thing that is just not fair, how much responsibility these kids have, where, like, why on earth is Katara, of all people, now responsible for telling her new friend about these, like, atrocities. Like, that's such a huge, again, responsibility. I can't imagine having to, like, break that kind of news to someone. So, of course, it makes sense that she's hesitating and that she's kind of chickening out.
Yeah, it feels a little bit like she's kind of taking it upon herself to be the one to reveal that, because I think if she wanted to, she could have just let Sokka be the one to call Aang over and say it and do it. But I think she wanted for somebody... She didn't trust Sokka to do it gently, I think.
That's probably true.
But I think those are the big things. But, we also had a flashback.
Right.
With Monkey Atso and Aang.
Side note, I did remember, like, a fun tidbit from when I first watched the series, and actually I, like, had this misunderstanding for way too long, because for whatever reason, it wasn't until I was, like, in my 20s before I started watching things with subtitles all the time. Mm-hmm. I was convinced that Monkey Atso was not Monk, M-O-N-K, Gyatso, Gyatso. Mm-hmm. No.
Monkey.
He was Monkey, the
Atso.
Animal, ATSO, and I just always found that so confusing. I was like, what does that mean? Why is he a monkey? Is that, like, a title? Like dragon?
So...
The one last thing that I had about the kind of Aang plot in this episode, for the spoiler-free section, is just about found family.
Oh.
Basically just that this is... you know, the introduction of another one of the major themes of the show, which is found family. And I just think that it's such an important and compelling storyline and theme to our generation specifically. Because when I think of a lot of the shows that people around our age, like young millennials, right, we were born in the early 90s around that time.
Yeah.
Everything that we love is all about found family and friend groups and just, like, getting to choose the people that you surround yourself with and spend your time with. And I am obviously super drawn to that, but I think it's interesting how much of a trend that is.
Yeah, I think that's significant. A lot of the people that I know, people that I've grown up with and met, have broken families, or they've got very damaged relationships with the people that they grew up with. I am lucky to actually not be, for that to not apply to me. But it's a significant thing that I'm aware that a lot of people that are our age have to deal with. I think it's significant that, Aang, imagine how very different the show would have been if the air nomads had survived. Or if they got there and,
just Monkey Atso was there.
If anybody that Aang... that connected Aang to his past, besides Momo, we should talk about, was there. Like, it would have been so very different. I don't think it would have been necessarily worse, but it would have done something very different to the found family dynamic. Here we have Aang is alone in this world, and he's got these people that do care very deeply for him, and they don't have to. They have no obligation to travel the world with him. But they decide to, and they decide to support him and be with him and, take care of him during his lowest moments. And that is significant to the found family theme.
Yeah, I think most of us fans of the show can really heavily relate to, one end of that dynamic or the other. Either, being the one who, like, takes someone in to be, like, your new found family, or being someone who is, like, experiencing that pain and looking for someone to, like, accept them.
Yeah. Before we move on to Zuko, I want to talk about kind of the further lore things that they went over, because we have Aang going into that one room that he couldn't go into normally. Where you have to use the airbending to open it up, and we see this huge room full of statues, and Qatar says they're in order in the Avatar cycle. It's we've got an airbender, then a waterbender, then an earthbender, then a firebender, and and Sokka comes up to one. He's like, who's this guy? And Aang's like, that's Avatar Roku. That's me in a past life. You were a firebender? No wonder I didn't trust you. How do you know that? I don't know. I just do. And you know, that must have been you in a past life. You believe in past lives, Katara? All of these things, just like little bits of dialogue that inform us about kind of how the Avatar works. The Avatar is this mystical figure who apparently is reincarnated into each member of the cycle. Apparently the last one was a firebender named Roku. And it's, I don't know, I thought this is always one of my favorite little scenes. Later on, Aang finds out about the airbenders are all dead, when he sees the corpse of, I believe he says, or somebody confirms that's Avatar, that's Monkey Atso.
Yeah, because he has the necklace
right.
that we see in the flashbacks,
right.
and then skeleton with a necklace.
Mm-hmm.
A little silly, but like important for our understanding
right.
of the plot.
So you see Monkey Atso on top of a pile of Fire Nation soldiers, and he's dead, and all of them are dead, and it activates the Avatar state, and it shows him nearly blowing them off the mountain with the like grief that he has. And I think this is when Katara really pushes the like, we are your family. Like she's really genuine. Like, we're your family now. I know that they're gone, but we are here for you. And I think that was significant.
Yeah. On the topic of Gyatso, I think it's a really kind of interesting and effective storytelling device, how they introduce him and give us that like very brief flashback so that we as viewers have some kind of like connection to feel the emotions of this scene. Because let's face it, we all know that like genocide is really bad, and the fact that this entire group of people is no longer around is a very like heavy emotional moment, but that's not something that most people can really connect to. So they gave us a character who our protagonist is really connected to, and therefore we have a lot of empathy for and start to care about, and then show us like that loss in order to connect us, and really just increase the emotional effectiveness of that moment.
Yeah, no, I think
it works really well.
Yeah, I think that's significant. We don't, as terrible as it is to say, we don't really care about numbers of people in the way that we ought to. What we care about are individual people that we have made actual connections to. If I find out that 10,000 people are hurt in something, I recognize that on an intellectual level. But if I find out that my mom was one of those 10,000 people, it matters. It matters a lot. And I think they made a good call by introducing Monkey Atso then and showing us that like this is the closest thing we have to a father figure for Aang, and that's big.
Exactly, it's a really classic kind of story device, but it's a classic for a reason.
Mm-hmm. And then my last thing for this particular plot before we move on to the Zuko plot is that when Aang went to the Avatar state, we saw this little thing where several different, I guess, temples around the world all lit up, and like one of them was like, tell the Fire Lord the Avatar's here, right? And so that was also that seemed significant. We have now we have official notice that like the Fire Lord should be aware of Aang's existence. So things you would expect things are going to start getting real after now, right? But yeah, I think that's all I have to say on Aang's plot. So, pivoting over to Zuko.
Yeah, I think I have a lot more to say about Zuko in the spoiler section for this one, just because right now in episode 3 we haven't learned all that much about him.
That's true.
But this fight scene between him and Zhao is still really important and telling, just on its own.
I will say that my first note on this fight is this is the first good fight of the series.
Yeah.
Like we had some fun in the last episode, but like this is one where we we had the whole thing. We had the music, we had the setting, we had the setup, we had the characters, and we showed, I don't know, it showed how these two work, what their fighting styles are like, and what they're all about. And then we got the really cool scene where Zuko was on the ground, and then he did that really cool like breakdancing move to sweep Zhao's leg. Which
you'll hear us call it that a lot.
It was a lot of fun.
That's his signature, and it's so like fun and unique.
Yeah, so I really like that. I will go over like the fighting styles a little bit more when we see more of the other bending. Yeah. Also, I love the idea of the Agni Kai. I love the idea that we have a formalized duel, which it apparently has like some rules and it has some impact, and like it matters. It's an honor duel, and I don't know.
It really is one of the first big examples we have of the Fire Nation's kind of emphasis on bending and the strength of bending as like moral character, and like that is something that is important to them in a person, in a leader, and that's what gives you status and credibility.
Yeah.
As we see, because you solve disputes by who's a better firebender. And that might not make a lot of sense, but it's very rooted in their beliefs as a culture. The Agni Kai music is also possibly the best track in the entire show.
Easily one of my favorites.
Just nothing gets me hyped like the Agni Kai music.
Yeah, I love it.
Ooh.
Okay. I think that's everything I have on the non-spoiler section.
Yeah. Okay. So do we want to get into the golden fuck?
I only have one. I only have one. And that was when it's another good old Sokka golden fuck. It is when... Oh, no. Did you get the same one? Did you say the same one?
I don't know. You're going to have to say it.
Oh, God.
And we'll find out.
So, Sokka's asleep, and Sokka's sleeping, and he's just having a good old time asleep. And then Aang wants him to get up, and Sokka's like, just like 5 more minutes or whatever. And then Aang pulls out a stick, and he's like, Sokka, there's a prickle snake in your bag. If there's ever a time to say, fuck, that is the time. There's a snake in my sleeping bag. Fuck. I'm out. So that was mine.
That's a good one. I did not nominate the same moment, but I also nominated a Sokka moment.
Excellent.
Particularly, I think that a fuck would be most effective while they're playing airball. And the moment that Sokka gets knocked through that goal, specifically, I think it would be so funny just to hear him say it like right as he gets hit, and then it kind of like fades out as he falls. Exactly.
Kind of like the sound of it's kind of smothered by the snow at the end. Fall.
So yeah, that was my nomination.
Okay, which one of those? I mean, Sokka wins this episode because I don't think we have any others.
Yeah, well, that's good.
Yeah. Anyway, which of those do we prefer? The prickle snake or the airball?
Yeah,
okay.
I'll give it to you.
Excellent. Sokka wins the golden fuck, and I think we are going to move on to the spoiler section, right? Okay.
We're ready to head into the spoiler zone, and we will see you on the other side. About you, but most of my like notes and observations for the spoiler zone this episode have to do with Zuko. So kind of on that note, it might be better to start with Aang. Yeah. I guess everyone else.
Yeah. But. Okay, yeah. I mean, so real fun fact about like Monkey Atso and whatnot is that Gyatso is the name of the current... Ooh, hold on. Not Dai Li. The Dalai Lama, thank you. I believe he's the current Dalai Lama. Maybe he might be a previous one, but at least the Dalai Lama at the time of the creation of this.
Yes.
Yeah, and the idea behind the Dalai Lama is that it is a person that is reincarnated, and to find the new Dalai Lama. When the last one dies, they find, I don't know exactly the entire criteria, but it must be another person that was born on the same day that the last one died. Mm-hmm. They give them a set of toys as a child to see which one they like the most. Mm-hmm. And the Dalai Lama, all of the Dalai Lama had like the exact same toys that they liked. Mm-hmm. And the Dalai Lama's name is Gyatso Tenzin. You would recognize that last name because that is Aang's child's name. And I just think that's a really cool... I always love these little like tidbits of information and things like that. Mm-hmm. Extra fast facts that connect the lore of the world to real life. So yeah, I thought that was fun.
I do love those little details.
Yeah. Aang's entire story is very significant, and it takes a big turn here because it's no longer... It's a lot less fun for Aang from here on out. He is the last airbender. I'm actually shocked that he doesn't spend time kind of searching for who... Like, I'm surprised he doesn't go into denial as quick. Like, I, as a viewer, went into denial. I was like... No, there's got to be other airbenders. They're going to show us some by the end of the series. It'll be fine. We'll be fine. We'll find some more. No, they never show another airbender in the world because they are all dead. Canonically, all of them but Aang. And I'm surprised and impressed that like both Aang and the creators of the show didn't, go through the whole denial stage of the process, which would have been heart-wrenching, but it would have also... I feel like it might have also kind of dragged the story down a little bit.
Yeah, I think that's probably the main reason they didn't.
Yeah.
I mean, I do think some of the theories about, like, maybe surviving descendants of the Airbenders are really fun to think about. Specifically, one of my favorite borderline crackpot conspiracy theories about the Avatar universe is that Ty Lee's family are like descendants of the Air Nomads, specifically because all the different nations seem to have pretty consistent eye colors, and Ty Lee has kind of gray eyes, and that's Air Nomads, as opposed to the like golden brown color of the Fire Nation.
And I can't wait to talk about Azula and Co. That'll be fun, but
yeah, not really relevant right now. Just, I don't know. It's a fun theory to think about, even though, yeah, like Greg said, it's extremely clear in the canon that they're all gone.
Yeah. Also, I like the introduction of Momo. I like that one scene where Aang is standing next to Momo and Appa, and he's like, me, you, and Appa were the last ones of this place, Mm-hmm. Very significant, very important, and...
Oof.
Right? Like, we gotta stick together, and Momo is down. Momo's we just get Appa's best friend, and we pull him into the whole group. But as weird as it is to say, I don't have too much else to talk about on that plot, because it's basically establishing for people that haven't watched what the framework that we're going to be working in for the rest of the series. It's important that we see that like the temples light up, so like the fire sages, that's a bit of foreshadowing actually. When the fire sages are like, tell the Fire Lord the Avatar is back, you should know right then and there those guys are not on Aang's side, even if they're supposed to be like,
True.
Right? Like,
yeah. There was also a very, once again, oof moment of foreshadowing when Katara says something like, Aang, it's not your fault.
He's going to blame himself, though.
Exactly. That's such a huge like character through line for him, is blaming himself for the entire death of the Air Nomads. And that's, again, it's a moment that just hurts so much more, but also has so much more meaning here with spoilers. Kind of knowing the story of why Aang left and the timing around like his disappearance and the genocide of the Air Nomads. It's a very understandable like guilt for him to carry.
Mm-hmm. Also, when we see Gyatso on a like pile of Fire Nation corpses, right? What was so my impression of it was that he had to defend himself during the like
invasion, whatever you want to call it,
right, during Sozin's Comet. If he did, if that is the case, then that means that Gyatso had to take on multiple Fire Nation soldiers by himself. More significantly, he had to do that during Sozin's Comet, and anybody that's seen the finale knows that that is no small, that is no small feat.
Yep, and he still took out like 20 of them.
Yeah. I think I saw like an alternate theory, but I don't remember it, and so if I remember it again, I'll bring it up later. But
yeah.
Anyway, that's always impressive to me. I just huge. Mm-hmm. But I think that's everything I've got on Aang.
Yep.
Katara and Sokka are more auxiliary in this episode. They're not as central. We don't really see them developing as much.
No. So pivoting to Zuko. The first thing that I noticed that I really enjoyed was the parallel between this episode and then there's an episode in season 3 where Zuko is lying to everyone about the Avatar being alive. And just, this time it's to Zhao and it's very kind of comical when they're, trying to get their story straight.
Yeah.
And it's just so interesting to think about him being in that same position and making the same decision to hide that fact that Aang is alive, but for such vastly different reasons.
Yeah. And it's funny that he's just kind of a bad liar regardless. He's just too genuine of a person, I think. But yeah, no, here he's trying to hide Aang from Zhao, not because of any desire to protect Aang or anything like that, just because if Zhao, with his vast resources, gets his hands on the Avatar before Zuko does, what hope does Zuko have to get his father's love again? Right?
Yeah.
That is the reason why Zuko's trying to hide it. But again, he's a bad liar. And, Zhao was like, why don't I just ask his crew? That's another big thing. I don't know, if Zuko had the trust of his crew, he probably could have, had a meeting with them all ahead of time and been like, listen, we are not going to discuss this with other people, okay? We need to keep this quiet, right? And maybe somebody would have actually listened and it wouldn't have been an issue. But, at this point in the plot, Zuko does not have the love and respect of his crew. He doesn't get that until the storm. It's, and...
Yeah, it's a pretty significant character arc for him. We only see it a couple times become relevant, but he does, over the course of the series, really grow that rapport with the crew of his ship, culminating in the moment in the storm where he chooses to, save them and keep their safety in mind instead of chasing Aang.
Right, and this is an important character aspect of a person that will eventually lead a country. Mm-hmm. So, it's just something I noticed. What else?
This introduces the concept of the Agni Kai.
Right.
We can't ignore, the significance of that. Iroh's line of, what happened the last time you did this?
Not a thing I would expect Iroh to say, honestly.
Yeah, it's a weird thing to say in the moment, but that's another thing that's more for the audience to kind of, tease people that, he's done an Agni Kai before.
How many Agni Kais are there in the series? It's this one. It is. Is it just the 3?
Those are the 3 that I can think of.
Yeah, and Zuko's in every single one of them.
And gosh, even further than just it being an Agni Kai paralleling, obviously, the Agni Kai with his father, at the very end of it, right before he does his breakdancing, fucking Zhao is still about to, fire blast him in the face.
Yes.
That hurts so much to watch because the animators really put the fear in his eyes.
Yeah.
It makes me so sad.
It's showing the cruelty and ruthlessness of Zhao. This is a man that will not hesitate to burn the other eye of an already traumatized and hurt teenager after verbally abusing him and lauding his power over him for for no good reason, honestly. Shit.
Yeah, I mean, he did that on purpose.
Yeah, absolutely.
He was like, this is going to be a direct flashback to the most traumatic event of your entire life.
Right.
And that's why I'm going to do that, because I know it'll hurt you emotionally as well as physically.
Yeah. And then
it's disgusting.
And then Zuko follows up by beating him and doing the actual worst thing that could have happened to Zhao. Like, I'm personally a fan of if the dude deserves to be punched in the face, you should punch him in the face. But they're pushing a whole. There's a theme here that like Zuko does have honor, even though he keeps searching for it everywhere. He has it. He's had it his whole life, and it is within his like moral code, and it is very Zuko to have an opponent beaten and to stop there. There's no reason to burn Zhao in the face, even though Zhao was more than willing to do it just now, and nearly did, and deserves it.
100%.
But that's not who Zuko is. Zuko is a very peaceful, honestly loving person.
Yeah. Even in exile, my nephew has more honor than you.
We're going to talk about the plot hole, the inconsistency.
The tea plot hole?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. What do you... Iroh says that ginseng is his favorite tea? That's... consistently throughout the rest of the show, it's jasmine.
Okay.
Ooh.
And I don't know if anybody listening has watched it recently, but basically the way the scene goes is, Zhao gets beaten in the Agni Kai, and then Zuko turns around and walks away, and then Zhao gets up, tries to do a sneak attack from behind, and Iroh stops him, tosses him on the ground, and then Zuko's about to retaliate, and Iroh says, "Don't taint your victory." Then Iroh turns to Zhao and says, "This is how the commander of the Fire Nation acts in defeat. Pathetic. Even in exile, my nephew is more honorable than you." And then as they're walking away, Zuko says, "Do you really mean that?" And Iroh says, "Of course. I told you ginseng is my favorite, and that's a goddamn lie. Ginseng is not Iroh's favorite tea, and everybody that's watched the show knows it's jasmine. He didn't name his new tea shop the Ginseng Dragon."
No. And he also, right after he tells Zhao off, he asks someone to bring him more tea. Right?
Oh yeah, no, you're right. Thank you for the tea. It was delicious.
Yes,
there it is.
That's what he says.
Thank you for that. That the entire thing does not work unless we have that extra detail.
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you for the
Regardless, it bothers me. I find it quite annoying. It doesn't matter at all. It means nothing. But it's just they hadn't established that yet.
Yeah.
I don't know what made them change his favorite tea, but ginseng is not his favorite.
We might
Angry
find
face in my notes.
We might end up being wrong, and they just never mention his favorite tea again, and it is ginseng. He just happens to always have jasmine around him. It could be that.
No, it just makes me think of Gilmore Girls, and they're one of my favorite shows, where Lorelei's drink is a dry gin martini with an olive. But for the first 2 seasons, she's always getting white wine and acts like white wine is her drink. And then they decide to change it halfway through. And it makes me angry every time she orders a white wine. These things do not matter. I just want that consistency. Oh. There's a really good moment when, right before the Agni Kai, where it's when Iroh tells him, don't forget what happened last time you faced a master.
Yeah.
And Zuko says, "I will never forget." And then we pan to show just his eye with the scar. And that's both, to new viewers, implying that, that's how he got that scar. Here's some more intrigue. Can't you, can't wait to, figure out what that's about. But also, here on a second viewing, or with spoilers, knowing how he got that scar, and also knowing just, in general, the significance of when they show us his scar throughout the show and what that means about his character, just makes that moment so much more impactful.
Yeah. I do want to keep kind of track of when they focus and emphasize one eye or the other, because it becomes much more obvious in season 2, but it becomes something of a metaphor for like the two sides of his personality fighting each other. His upbringing and him trying to be the like Fire Lord or the person that his father wants him to be versus being the person that he truly is, the person that is caring and loving and worries about other people, and the person that Iroh has been trying to cultivate during all of this time. So, like, right now we see the scarred side. Yeah. And that's what we're focusing on right now.
Yeah, and it both gives that little bit of, like, a hint or the intrigue as to, like, makes us wonder where the scar came from and want to know more about it. But it also is showing us in this moment that he's acting with, like, his worst impulses.
Right.
Okay.
So, note on the fighting styles... God, I don't remember all of them, actually, but each of the fighting styles is obviously influenced by a different martial art. I believe that firebending is loosely based off of, like, Shaolin Kung Fu. I want to say earthbending is, like, Hung Gar, I think is what it's called. I could have that wrong. I know that Toph has a very different style, and it's, like, praying mantis style. I forgot what the airbenders' fighting style was based off of. But I do know that Zhao Yu from Tekken uses that exact same fighting style. And I know that waterbenders use Tai Chi. And it was very cool seeing, like, the different fighting styles. The big thing about the Shaolin Kung Fu is that being able to keep yourself balanced and, the break his root part is very significant because they do a lot of kicks. They do a lot of, like, standing on one foot and, if you can sweep the leg, if you can knock somebody off balance, if you can kind of take the initiative and then continue the offensive, you are likely to win. And that's exactly what we saw here.
Yeah, and I think this example of Zuko developing his own style is especially interesting when you take into account the whole deal with Iroh learning styles from all the different types of bending that makes him unique. And without even realizing it, I think Zuko is picking up on that. Yeah.
Oh, man. It would have been so cool if we saw, like, a fully developed Zuko fighting style where it's like, I don't know, he incorporates aspects of airbending or something, right? That'd be really cool. Anyway, that was my last note. That's everything I had.
Yeah. So overall, a really big episode. Trauma with a capital T.
All right, well, that's all we have today for Season 1, Episode 3.
Yep, it's one of the heaviest in Season 1, but definitely sets up a lot of good stuff for the rest of the series. Thank you so much for listening, and we hope that you'll join us next time when we discuss Season 1, Episode 4, the Kyoshi Warriors.
Until next time, remember, just because it's spoiled doesn't mean it's rotten.
Have a good one. Bye.
You know it was good.